The message came on a Tuesday morning, though time meant little when dealing with beings from across the galaxy. Jiwon stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, reading the words for the 5th time. The translation was perfect, but the meaning still felt impossible. The Galactic Council requests the immediate presence of Earth's representatives for formal evaluation and potential membership consideration. Jiwon had spent 15 years as Earth's top diplomat, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. For decades, humanity had known they were being watched. Strange ships appeared in Earth's outer system, observed for a few days, then vanished into the dark between stars. Scientists tracked their movements, military forces prepared for contact, but the Watchers never made themselves known. Until now. Minho, you need to see this, Jiwon called to her colleague across the office. Military strategist Minho had been her partner in preparing Earth's first contact protocols. He was calm under pressure, quick to understand complex situations, and had an unusual talent for reading people. Even alien people, she hoped. Minho walked over and read the message. His face showed no emotion, but Jiwon knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders. When do we leave? 3 days. The coordinates are included. Jiwon pointed to the complex mathematical formula at the bottom of the message. Hyeon is already working on the navigation requirements. Dr. Hyeon was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, or at least what little they had managed to study from the brief encounters with the Watchers. She had spent years trying to understand how their ships moved faster than light, how they appeared and disappeared without warning. Now she would finally get answers. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Earth's leaders chose their representatives carefully. Jiwon would lead the diplomatic mission, Minho would handle security and military matters, Hyeon would serve as their scientific advisor and translator for any technical discussions. They were not the only humans making the journey. Dong-hyuk, Earth's most creative engineer, joined the team after demonstrating his ability to solve problems in ways that surprised even other humans. Dr. Soyeon, a mathematician whose work had already impressed several alien observers, would help with any complex calculations or logical challenges they might face. The ship that came to collect them was unlike anything in Earth's fleet. It was smooth and silent, shaped like a teardrop made of metal that seemed to shift color in the light. The alien pilot spoke through a translation device that made its voice sound flat and emotionless. I am Veltar. I will bring you to the council station. The journey will take 6 of your days. Veltar was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. Its eyes were large and dark, and it moved with careful, measured steps. When it looked at the humans, Jiwon felt like she was being studied by a scientist examining insects under a microscope. The ship's interior was equally strange. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from nowhere. There were no visible controls, no buttons or screens. Veltar simply touched certain spots on the walls, and the ship responded. The humans were given a small section with furniture that had been adjusted for their size and shape. During the journey, Veltar explained what they would find at the Council Station. 12 different species had joined together to form the Galactic Council. They shared technology, settled disputes between worlds, and worked together to maintain peace across thousands of star systems. Each species brought something valuable to the Council, Veltar explained. The Dominion species are master warriors. The crystalline beings can manipulate energy in ways others cannot understand. The Watchers have lived longer than most stars and know the history of the galaxy. What about humans? Jiwon asked. Why are we being invited now? Veltar was quiet for a long moment. That is for the Council to determine. Your species is young. You have developed quickly, but you still fight among yourselves. Many Council members question whether humans are ready for galactic responsibility. Minho leaned forward. But someone thinks we are ready, or we wouldn't be here. Perhaps, Veltar said. Or perhaps they wish to see how you fail. The Council Station was massive beyond imagination. It was built inside a hollow asteroid, but the humans could see that it had been expanded far beyond its original size. Ships from dozens of different species docked at various ports. Some ships were sleek and fast, others were huge and blocky, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. As their ship approached the docking bay, Ji-won saw beings she could barely understand. Some walked on legs like humans, others floated in the air, and some seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. She tried to stay calm, but her heart was beating fast. The council chamber was a circular room with a high ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central area where the humans would stand. Each platform held representatives from different species, and Ji-won could feel their eyes watching as the human delegation entered. Veltar took its place on one of the platforms and spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. The species, known as humans, have been brought before the council for evaluation. They seek membership and the rights and responsibilities that come with it. A being made of what looked like living crystal spoke next. Its voice was like the sound of wind chimes. They are young and violent. Their planet is scarred by wars. Why should we consider them? Because they have potential, another voice said. This came from a creature that looked like it was made of shadow and starlight. They have spread across their solar system in a few short centuries. They adapt quickly to new challenges. A massive reptilian being with scales like armor spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. Adaptation is not enough. The galaxy faces real dangers. The swarm species grows stronger. The void pirates become bolder. We need allies who can fight, not children who play with fire. Ji-won stepped forward. She had practiced this speech for days, but standing in front of these ancient and powerful beings made her words feel small and inadequate. We know we are young compared to your species. We know we have made mistakes and fought wars among ourselves. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have learned to work together despite our differences. We have learned to find solutions when others see only problems. The crystal being's form flashed with different colors. Words are easy, young human. The council requires proof. You will face 3 trials. The first will test your understanding of technology and science. The second will test your ability to solve complex problems. The third will test your worth in actual conflict. Minho moved closer to Ji-won. What happens if we fail? The shadow being seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell. Then you return to your small world and wait another 1,000 years before the council considers you again. And if we succeed? Heian asked. Veltar answered. Then humanity joins the council as equals. You will have access to our knowledge, our technology, our protection, but you will also share our responsibilities and our dangers. The chamber fell silent. Ji-won looked at her team, then back at the council members. We accept your trials. The trials would begin at the next galactic cycle, giving the humans time to rest and prepare. As they were led to their quarters, Ji-won couldn't shake the feeling that some of the council members were hoping they would fail. The crystal being and the reptilian creature had looked at them with something close to contempt, but others seemed genuinely curious about what humans might accomplish. The shadow being had watched them with interest, and one of the energy entities had pulsed with brighter light when Ji-won spoke about learning from mistakes. That night, as the human delegation prepared for what lay ahead, Ji-won stood at the window of their quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, small and far away. The weight of representing her entire species felt overwhelming. Minho joined her at the window. Second thoughts? Many, Ji-won admitted. But we're here now. Whatever happens, we show them what humans can do. And what can we do? Ji-won smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. Something they don't expect, something they've never seen before. The trials would begin soon, and humanity's future among the stars would be decided. The first trial began 3 days later in the Council's technology laboratory. The room was filled with devices that hummed with energy, machines that defied the laws of physics as humans understood them, and workstations that seemed to respond to thought rather than touch. Dong-hyuk stood with the other human representatives, watching as each species demonstrated their technological mastery. The Dominion species, led by the arrogant Zethrol, showed weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Their demonstration left a small black void floating in the center of the room, which slowly faded away after several minutes. "Impressive," Veltar commented from the observation platform. "Spatial disruption technology has been perfected by the Dominion over many centuries." Next came the crystalline beings. Their representative, a towering figure of living gemstone called Crystal, approached a complex energy grid. Without touching anything, Crystal caused the entire grid to light up with patterns of power that danced through the air like living lightning. The energy formed shapes, created music, and even generated small objects from pure force. "Energy manipulation at the quantum level," Heian whispered to Jiwon. "They're controlling individual particles with their minds." The demonstrations continued. The shadow beings showed technology that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The reptilian species presented armor that could regenerate itself and weapons that learned from each battle. Ancient robots displayed computational systems that processed information faster than the human brain could follow. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Dong-hyuk walked to the center of the room, carrying a simple metal toolbox. The council members watched with barely hidden amusement. After seeing technology that bent reality itself, what could these primitive humans possibly offer? "Our technology is different," Dong-hyuk began, his voice steady despite the pressure. "We don't manipulate space or control energy with our thoughts, but we have something else." He opened his toolbox and removed what looked like ordinary hand tools: hammer, screwdriver, wrench, measuring tape. The council members looked confused. Zethral actually laughed. "This is your great technology? Metal sticks and crude implements?" Dong-hyuk ignored the mockery and approached one of the energy devices that Crystal had just used. It was clearly broken, sparking weakly and making grinding sounds. The crystalline being had mentioned that this particular unit had been malfunctioning for years, and no one could determine why. "May I?" Dong-hyuk asked. Crystal's crystal form flashed with colors that the translation system interpreted as curiosity and doubt. "If you wish, but our greatest engineers have examined this device for decades." Dong-hyuk knelt beside the machine and began to study it. He didn't try to interface with it mentally like the other species would. Instead, he used his eyes, his hands, and his basic tools. He tapped different sections with his hammer, listening to the sounds. He measured gaps and angles with his simple instruments. He even smelled different components. The council members grew restless. This was taking far longer than their demonstrations, and the humans seemed to be doing nothing but playing with primitive tools. "Perhaps we should move on," Zethral suggested with contempt. "The humans clearly lack the sophistication needed for—" A sudden hum filled the room. The broken energy device began to glow with steady, bright light. The grinding sound stopped, replaced by a smooth, harmonious vibration. The sparks disappeared, and the machine operated perfectly for the first time in decades. The chamber fell silent. Dong-hyuk stood up and wiped his hands on a cloth. The problem was simple. One of the crystal alignment nodes had shifted by about 2 millimeters. It was so small that sophisticated sensors couldn't detect it, but it was throwing off the entire energy flow. "I just nudged it back into place." Crystal's form flashed with rapid color changes. "Impossible. Our sensors can detect variations at the atomic level, but they look for complex problems," Dong-hyuk explained. "Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. We have a saying on Earth: when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras." The shadow being leaned forward from its platform. "Explain this saying." Heian stepped forward. "It means that when something goes wrong, the cause is usually something simple and common, not something rare and complicated. Human technology might seem primitive, but it teaches us to solve problems step by step using basic principles." Veltar's stone-like features showed something that might have been respect. "An interesting approach. Continue with your demonstration." Dr. Soyeon moved to the center of the room next. She had been watching the council's displays carefully, and something had caught her attention. On one of the observation platforms was a large display showing mathematical equations that seemed to shift and change constantly. "That equation," she said, pointing at the display. "What is it?" The ancient robot representative, a being called Mechanicus, whose body was made of metal that seemed older than stars, spoke in a voice like grinding gears. It is the eternal problem, a mathematical theorem that has puzzled the greatest minds in the galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. It relates to the nature of space and time themselves. Soyeon studied the equation for several minutes. The numbers and symbols were unlike anything from Earth's mathematics, but the underlying structure was familiar. She could see the pattern, the rhythm that held it all together. "May I try something?" she asked. "You may try," Mechanicus replied, "but understand that billions of the galaxy's greatest mathematicians have attempted to solve this theorem. It is considered unsolvable." Soyeon approached the display and began to work. But instead of trying to manipulate the alien symbols directly, she started translating the problem into human mathematical concepts. She wrote on a simple tablet from Earth, using numbers and formulas that would have been familiar to any college student. The council members watched with growing confusion. Soyeon's work looked impossibly simple compared to the complex theoretical frameworks they were used to. She drew basic geometric shapes, used elementary calculus, and applied principles that humans had understood for centuries. "What is she doing?" Zethral demanded. "This is children's mathematics." "She's finding a new approach," Minho said quietly. He couldn't follow the math, but he recognized the look on Soyeon's face. It was the same expression she had worn when solving impossible problems back on Earth. After an hour of work, Soyeon stepped back from her tablet. "I think I have it." She approached the display and input her solution using the alien mathematical interface. The symbols on the screen began to change, flowing and shifting as the ancient equation transformed. The numbers aligned, the formulas balanced, and suddenly the entire display flashed with brilliant light. When the light faded, the equation was solved. The theorem that had stumped galactic civilization for 1,000,000 years was complete, elegant, and perfect. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Mechanicus moved closer to the display, its ancient metal form whirring with computational activity. "How?" it finally asked. "How did you see what we could not?" Soyeon smiled. "You were all thinking about the problem in the same way, using the same advanced mathematical frameworks. But sometimes a fresh perspective helps. I approached it like a human would, using intuition and pattern recognition rather than pure computational power." Kristal's crystalline form was flashing with rapid, excited colors. "You solved the eternal problem with elementary mathematics?" "The principles were elementary," Soyeon corrected. "But applying them required thinking about the problem differently. Human mathematics might seem simple, but it teaches us to find creative solutions rather than just powerful ones." The shadow, being on the observation platform, pulsed with what seemed like approval. "Fascinating. Your species approaches problems from unexpected angles." Zethral's expression had changed from contempt to uncertainty. "These could be coincidences. Simple, luck." But Veltar was looking at the humans with new interest. "Perhaps. We shall see how they perform in the remaining trials." As the first trial concluded, the human delegation was escorted back to their quarters. The council members remained behind, engaged in intense discussion about what they had witnessed. Ji-won walked with her team through the station's corridors, noting how other beings stopped to stare at them. Word was spreading quickly about the humans who had solved problems in minutes that had challenged the galaxy's greatest minds for millennia. "How? Did you know the machine just needed a simple adjustment?" Hyon asked Dong-hyuk. "Experience," he replied. "I've fixed thousands of machines on Earth. Most problems aren't caused by complex failures. Usually something just came loose or shifted out of place. The fancier the machine, the more likely it is that a simple problem is causing complex symptoms." "And the mathematics?" Minho asked Soyeon. "Pattern recognition," she said. "Humans are very good at seeing patterns even in unfamiliar systems. The alien symbols were new, but the mathematical relationships were universal. I just had to find the right way to look at them." That evening, as they prepared for the second trial, Ji-won couldn't shake the feeling that they had surprised the council more than they had expected to. The looks of shock and growing respect from some members contrasted sharply with the continued skepticism from others. "They're starting to see that we're different," she told her team. "Not necessarily, better or worse, just." The second trial was supposed to begin the next morning. But emergency alarms woke the humans in the middle of their sleep cycle. Red lights flashed throughout the station as urgent announcements echoed through the corridors in dozens of alien languages. Jiwon rushed from her quarters to find chaos in the main corridors. Beings from different species moved with desperate urgency, some heading to command centers while others ran toward docking bays. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices and panic. Veltar appeared through the crowd, its stone-like features showing stress for the first time since the humans had met it. The trials are suspended. We face a crisis that threatens the entire council. What's happening? Minho asked, his military training automatically assessing the situation. The swarm, Veltar replied grimly. They have launched simultaneous attacks on 3 council worlds. Our fleets are responding, but the alien's voice trailed off in a way that suggested the response was not going well. Hyon had heard about the swarm during their journey to the council station. They were a species that existed only to consume and destroy. Unlike other hostile aliens who fought for territory or resources, the swarm fought simply because it was their nature. They bred rapidly, adapted quickly, and showed no interest in communication or surrender. How bad is it? Jiwon asked. Before Veltar could answer, another being approached them. This was Korvan, one of the ancient Watchers. Its body seemed to be made of liquid starlight, constantly shifting and flowing. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. 3 worlds are under siege. Kepler Station has gone silent. The mining colonies in the Spiral Arm are fighting a losing battle. Our traditional battle strategies are failing against their new tactics. The humans followed the alien beings to the Council's command center, a massive room filled with holographic displays showing the galactic situation. The humans could see fleet movements, battle reports, and casualty counts that grew larger every minute. Zethral stood at the center of the room, coordinating the Dominion's military response. His usual arrogance was replaced by grim determination. We need more ships at Kepler Station. The swarm is using some kind of new breeding technology. For every ship we destroy, 2 more appear. Kristal's crystalline form flashed with frustrated colors. Our energy weapons are ineffective against their new armor. They adapt to our attacks faster than we can modify our weapons. Mechanicus processed battle data with mechanical precision. Current casualty projections indicate total fleet loss within 72 hours at current engagement rates. The shadow being, whose name the humans learned was Lumainos, seemed to phase in and out of reality as it analyzed the situation. We have faced the swarm before, but never with such coordination. Something has changed in their behavior. Jiwon watched the holographic displays with growing alarm. The swarm forces moved in patterns that seemed random but effective. They struck hard, disappeared when the council fleets responded, then reappeared somewhere unexpected. It was like fighting smoke. What about your backup strategies? Minho asked. Veltar's features darkened. We have tried everything. Overwhelming force, defensive formations, cutting off their supply lines. Nothing works. They fight unlike any enemy we have encountered before. Captain Ji-hoon, who had arrived with additional human military advisors that morning, studied the battle displays carefully. He had spent his career fighting against impossible odds, leading Earth's defense forces against threats that should have destroyed them. Something about the swarm's tactics seemed familiar. They're not fighting randomly, he said quietly. The entire command center fell silent. All eyes turned to the human military officer. Explain, Zethral demanded. Ji-hoon approached the main display, pointing at the swarm movement patterns. Look at how they attack. They hit hard, fall back, then hit somewhere else. But they're not just running away. They're drawing your fleets out of position. Of course they are, Zethral replied with irritation. We know they use hit-and-run tactics. No, Ji-hoon continued. Not hit-and-run. Pack hunting. The alien beings looked confused. Korvan leaned forward with interest. Explain this concept. Minho joined his colleague. On Earth, some predators hunt in groups. Wolves, for example. They don't just attack randomly. One group makes noise and draws the prey's attention while another group circles around behind. The prey thinks it's fighting the obvious threat, but the real attack comes from where it isn't looking. Ji-hoon nodded and pointed at different sections of the display. The swarm attacks at Kepler Station aren't the real threat. Neither are the battles at the mining colonies. They're drawing your fleets away from something else. Dr. Soyon had been quietly analyzing the mathematical patterns in the swarm's movements. Ji-hoon is right. If you map their attack patterns, they're creating a large triangle. All your fleets are being pulled toward the points of the triangle, which means the real target is... Haeon traced lines on the display, calculating trajectory and timing. Here, the Council's main shipyard at Nexus Prime. The command center erupted in alarm. Nexus Prime was where the Council built and maintained their most advanced warships. If the swarm destroyed it, the Council's military capability would be crippled for decades. Impossible, Zethral protested. We have scouts monitoring all approaches to Nexus Prime. There are no swarm forces in that sector. Communications specialist Nyon had been listening to the battle reports with growing understanding. What if they're not coming from outside the sector? What if they're already there? Veltar's stone features shifted with realization. The mining asteroids around Nexus Prime. We thought they were empty because the swarm destroyed the mining operation months ago. But what if they didn't destroy it? Ji-hoon asked. What if they captured it and have been breeding there ever since? Right under your noses, in a place you already consider lost. The holographic display suddenly updated with new information. Scout ships had finally been sent to investigate the asteroid mining sites around Nexus Prime. The reports were terrifying. The asteroids were hollow, filled with swarm breeding chambers and thousands of attack craft ready to launch. They're going to attack in 3 hours, Mechanicus calculated. Nexus Prime has minimal defenses because all our fleets are engaged elsewhere. The council members looked at each other with growing desperation. Their fleets were too far away to return in time. The defense stations around Nexus Prime were designed to stop small raiders, not a massive swarm assault. We could evacuate the shipyard, Lumino suggested, and lose our primary fleet construction facility, Korvan replied grimly. The war would be over before it truly began. Ji-won stepped forward. What if we help? Zethral turned to her with barely controlled frustration. Help? You have no ships, no weapons, no understanding of galactic warfare. But we have ideas, Minho said calmly. And right now, ideas might be more valuable than ships. Veltar considered this. What are you proposing? Ji-hoon moved to the display controls. Give us access to your fleet coordination systems. Let us show you how humans fight when we're outnumbered and outgunned. Which is most of the time, Nayon added, with a slight smile. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Their traditional strategies were failing. Their advanced technology was proving useless against an enemy that adapted faster than they could respond. These primitive humans were offering to help with tactics the council had never considered. Korvan was the first to speak. What do you need? Complete tactical control of any ships that can reach Nexus Prime, Ji-hoon replied. And trust that we know what we're doing, even when our orders seem strange. Kristal's crystal form flashed with nervous colors. You want us to put our ships under human command? You want to save your shipyard? Minho asked bluntly. The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Veltar made the decision. You have tactical command. All available ships will follow your orders. Ji-hoon nodded and immediately began issuing commands that confused the alien military commanders. Instead of sending ships directly to defend Nexus Prime, he ordered them to positions that seemed random. Some ships were told to power down and drift like debris. Others were instructed to broadcast false distress signals. What are you doing? Zethral demanded. You're leaving Nexus Prime defenseless. No, Ji-hoon replied with calm confidence. We're setting a trap. The swarm thinks they're the hunters, but they're about to become the prey. Nayon worked frantically to coordinate communications between dozens of different ship types with incompatible systems. All units report ready. For Operation Reversal. Operation Reversal? Veltar asked. Minho smiled grimly. We're going to show the swarm what it feels like to be the ones caught by surprise. On the display, the asteroid bases around Nexus Prime began to open. Thousands of swarm ships poured out, heading directly for the seemingly defenseless shipyard. They moved with complete confidence, certain that their deception had worked perfectly. They had no idea that the humans had already seen through their plan and turned it against them. The real battle was about to begin. The swarm fleet moved toward Nexus Prime like a dark cloud of death, thousands of ships pouring from the hidden asteroid bases. On the Council Command Center displays, the enemy force looked overwhelming. But Admiral Sung-min, watching from his flagship positioned behind a moon 3 light minutes away, saw something different. "They're moving exactly as predicted," he reported to the command center. Navigation Officer Yuna confirmed their position relative to the trap zones Ji-hoon had carefully planned. "All ships maintain radio silence," Ji-hoon ordered from the council station. "Let them think they've achieved complete surprise." The swarm had used deception against the council for months, hiding in plain sight while building their forces. Now the humans would use their own weapon against them, the element of surprise combined with coordinated teamwork. Zethril watched the displays with growing tension. "Your ships are too far away. By the time they reach Nexus Prime, the shipyard will be destroyed." "Will it?" Minho asked calmly. As the swarm fleet approached the shipyard, the first part of the human plan activated. What the swarm thought was a defenseless target suddenly came alive with activity. But instead of fighting, the shipyard began launching everything it had. Half-built ships, construction equipment, supply pods, even empty fuel containers. "What are they doing?" Kristal asked, her crystalline form flashing with confused colors. Naeon smiled as she coordinated the chaos. "Creating cover and confusion." The space around Nexus Prime filled with debris and moving objects. The swarm fleet found itself flying through a maze of obstacles that blocked their sensors and disrupted their formations. Ships that expected clear firing lines instead found themselves dodging construction equipment and half-assembled frigates. "Phase 2, Ji-hoon announced. The Council ships that had been drifting silently in the asteroid belt suddenly powered up, but they didn't charge toward the enemy as the Council's traditional tactics would demand. Instead, they moved to surround the swarm fleet from all directions, cutting off escape routes. Dr. Kangmin, monitoring the battle from the flagship's analysis station, provided real-time tactical updates. "Swarm formation is breaking apart. They're trying to adapt to the obstacles, but their coordination is failing." This was the key insight the humans had provided. The swarm's greatest strength was their ability to work together as a single organism. But that strength became a weakness when their communication and coordination were disrupted. Admiral Seung-min gave the signal for Phase 3. "All ships, execute Maneuver 7. The council members in the command center watched in amazement, as the human-commanded fleet performed tactics they had never seen before. Instead of massive formations attacking in straight lines, small groups of ships darted between the debris, striking specific targets before disappearing again. "They're not trying to destroy the entire swarm fleet," Korvan observed with growing understanding. "They're targeting the command ships." "Exactly," Minho confirmed. "Cut off the head and the body dies. Or in this case, disrupt the coordination and the swarm becomes just a bunch of individual ships." Yuna's navigation skills proved crucial as she guided groups of mixed alien ships through the debris field with precision that amazed their crews. Ships from different species that had never worked together before moved in perfect harmony under human coordination. The swarm began to realize they were trapped, but their attempts to break free only made things worse. When they tried to retreat to the asteroid bases, they found council ships waiting for them. When they tried to regroup in open space, they discovered that the debris included disguised weapons platforms that had been quietly moved into position. "They're adapting," Seung-min reported as the swarm ships began to change their tactics mid-battle. "New armor configurations appearing on their vessels." "Then we adapt faster," Ji-hoon replied. He switched to a secondary communication channel that connected him directly to every ship captain in the fleet. "All units implement evolution protocol." What happened next shocked even the humans' allies. Instead of maintaining fixed battle plans, each ship captain began improvising based on what they saw in front of them. The fleet's tactics changed constantly, with new strategies emerging organically as individual commanders responded to local conditions. Zethril stared at the displays in disbelief. "This is chaos. No military force can function without central coordination." "Human military forces can," Ji-hoon said simply. "We train our people to think for themselves while working toward a common goal. Every captain out there is making their own decisions, but they all understand the mission. Soyeon had been tracking the mathematical patterns of the battle, looking for weaknesses in the swarm's responses. I'm seeing predictable cycles in their adaptation rate. They change tactics every 3.7 minutes. If we time our attacks right, do it, Jihoon agreed. The human fleet began timing their attacks to exploit the brief moments when the swarm was switching between tactical configurations. During those few seconds of vulnerability, concentrated strikes hit critical systems. Before the enemy could adapt their defenses, the tide of battle turned decisively. The swarm fleet, which had numbered in the thousands, found itself cut into isolated groups that could be defeated piece by piece. Their coordination network, damaged by the debris field and targeted strikes, couldn't keep up with the constantly changing human tactics. Impossible, Mechanicus calculated. The humans are using inferior technology against a numerically superior force and winning. Laminos phased partially out of reality, its form flickering with what seemed like excitement. They're not winning because of their technology. They're winning because of their people. Admiral Sungmin proved this point perfectly. When his flagship's main weapons failed during a crucial engagement, he didn't retreat or call for support. Instead, he ordered his crew to ram their damaged ship into a swarm command vessel, disabling it long enough for other ships to finish it off. "Sir, ramming maneuvers are not recommended," his tactical officer protested. "Sometimes you do what works, not what's recommended," Sungmin replied calmly. This attitude spread throughout the human-led fleet. When conventional weapons failed, crews found creative alternatives. When standard tactics didn't work, captains invented new ones on the spot. When ships were damaged, they continued fighting with whatever systems still functioned. The Council observers watched in growing amazement as the humans demonstrated something they had never seen before: the ability to maintain fighting effectiveness even when everything went wrong. "Their ships are taking massive damage," Kristal observed. "Why don't their crews panic or retreat?" "Because they trust each other," Nayeon explained as she coordinated rescue operations for damaged vessels. "Every person on every ship knows that their teammates will not abandon them. They fight harder because they're fighting for each other, not just for victory." Dr. Kangman's analysis confirmed what everyone could see on the displays. Swarm fleet coherence at 23% and falling. They're starting to retreat. But the humans weren't finished. As the surviving swarm ships tried to escape, they found that the human commanders had anticipated this as well. Escape routes had been quietly blocked, supply lines cut, and reinforcements prevented from arriving. "Complete victory," Veltar announced with something that might have been awe in its voice. "The swarm fleet is destroyed or scattered. Nexus Prime is secure." The command center erupted in celebrations from various species, but the humans remained focused on helping damaged ships and coordinating rescue operations. Even in victory, their priority was taking care of their people. Jihoon finally allowed himself a small smile as the last enemy ship fled the system. "All units begin search and rescue operations. No one gets left behind." Zethral approached the human military leaders with an expression the translation system identified as profound respect. "I owe you an apology. I thought your species was too primitive for galactic warfare." "We are primitive," Minho replied honestly. "But sometimes primitive solutions work better than advanced ones." Korvan moved closer to the group of humans, its ancient starlight form pulsing with curiosity. "How did you know the tactics that we have used for millennia would fail?" Sungmin, now connected by communication link from his damaged flagship, answered the question. "Because you all fight the same way. Advanced technology, careful planning, logical tactics. The swarm adapted to that because it's predictable." "And human tactics are not predictable?" Lum Enos asked. "Human tactics are barely predictable to humans." Yuna laughed from her navigation station. "We make it up as we go along, and somehow it works." Soyeon had been analyzing the battle data, looking for patterns that could be applied to future conflicts. The key was emotional intelligence combined with tactical flexibility. The swarm is essentially a machine intelligence. It responds to logical inputs with logical outputs. But humans don't always act logically. "You fought with your hearts as well as your minds?" Veltar observed. "That's what makes us dangerous," Jihoon said quietly, "and what makes us trustworthy allies." The battle was over, but its implications were just beginning to be understood. 3 days after the battle, the council chamber was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Word of humanity's victory over the swarm had spread rapidly through the interstellar communication networks. Species that had never attended council. Meetings before had sent representatives to see these humans for themselves. Jiwon stood in the center of the chamber with her team, but the atmosphere was completely different from their first appearance. Where before there had been skepticism and barely hidden contempt, now there was intense curiosity and something approaching awe. Veltar called the special session to order. "We are gathered to discuss the events at Nexus Prime and their implications. For the Galactic Council, the human delegation will present their analysis of the engagement." Admiral Sungmin, still bearing bandages from his ship's ramming maneuver, stepped forward first. "The swarm was defeated because they expected us to fight like everyone else in the galaxy. When we didn't, their adaptation systems couldn't keep up." "But how did you know to fight differently?" asked Thylex, a representative from the ethereal consortium who had arrived just that morning. Their species existed partially outside normal space-time, and they rarely bothered with physical conflicts. Minho answered, "Because on Earth, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every war taught us something new. Every conflict forced us to adapt or die. We learned that the most important thing in battle isn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It's the ability to change faster than your enemy." Dr. Sumin, the xenobiologist who had joined the human delegation after the battle, had spent the last 3 days studying recordings of the engagement. Her analysis had revealed something that surprised even the humans themselves. "What made the difference wasn't just your tactics," she explained to the assembled council. "It was how your people worked together despite coming from completely different cultures and backgrounds." She activated a holographic display showing communication patterns during the battle. "Look at how information flowed through your fleet. Ship captains shared discoveries instantly. Crew members from different ships coordinated repairs without formal command structures. Engineers solved problems by combining ideas from multiple species. Kristall's crystalline form flashed with rapid color changes that the translation system interpreted as excitement and disbelief. You integrated our technologies with yours in real time, during combat?" Neon smiled. "Humans are very good at learning from others. When we saw how your energy systems worked, we figured out ways to combine them with our mechanical systems. It wasn't planned. It just happened." "But how?" demanded Morgan, a representative from the ancient archives. His species had existed longer than most stars and had never seen such rapid technological adaptation. "Our energy manipulation requires generations of training to master." Dr. Kangmin had been studying this exact question. "Human brains are wired for pattern recognition and social learning. We can watch someone do something once and figure out the basic principles. We might not understand the theory, but we can make it work." He showed brain scan data that the humans had shared with council scientists. "When humans cooperate, our brain activity actually synchronizes. We start thinking alike, which lets us coordinate complex actions without formal communication. Mechanicus process this information with mechanical precision." "You are describing a form of distributed intelligence, multiple individual minds functioning as components of a larger system." "Exactly," Soyon agreed. "But unlike a hive mind, each individual retains their independence and creativity. We get the benefits of coordination without losing the ability to think differently." The implications of this were staggering. Every species in the council had achieved greatness through different means: superior technology, psychic abilities, ancient wisdom, or pure physical power. But humans seem to have achieved something else entirely: the ability to learn from anyone and integrate new knowledge instantly. Korvan leaned forward, its starlight form pulsing with interest. "During the battle, we observed human crews learning to operate our weapon systems in minutes rather than the years typically required." "That's because we didn't try to understand everything," Jihoon explained. "We just learned enough to make them work. Complete understanding can come later. In battle, you need results, not perfect knowledge." Zethril, who had been notably quiet since the battle, finally spoke. "I have reviewed the tactical recordings multiple times. Your forces should have been destroyed within the first hour. The swarm had every advantage: numbers, coordination, adaptive technology, yet you won decisively. Because we had something they couldn't adapt to," Sungmin said simply. "Unpredictability combined with absolute trust in each other." Luminos phased partially into normal space to ask a question that had been puzzling many observers. Your species still fights wars among yourselves. How can you trust each other? So completely in battle? The question hung in the air for a moment. It touched on something fundamental about human nature that even the humans themselves didn't fully understand. Yuna answered first. Because when there's a real threat, our differences stop mattering. We can argue about politics and territory and resources, but when someone threatens our people, we fight together. It's like family, Neon added. Brothers and sisters might fight each other all the time, but they'll unite against anyone who threatens their family from outside. Veltar's stone features showed deep contemplation. You consider other humans to be family, even those you have never met? All humans are family, Jiwan said simply, and by extension, our allies become family too. During the battle, those weren't council ships and human ships. They were our ships, crewed by our people, fighting for our homes. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this sank in. Most species in the galaxy fought for territory, resources, or ideology. Humans fought for each other. Dr. Suman continued her presentation with findings that had shocked the human delegation as much as the council. Our analysis shows that human emotional responses actually improved combat effectiveness rather than hindering it. Fear made crews more careful. Anger made them more determined. Love made them more protective of their teammates. Impossible, Mechanicus calculated. Emotion introduces unpredictable variables that reduce efficiency. For machines, yes, Minho agreed. But humans aren't machines. Our emotions give us strength when logic says we should give up. They help us find solutions when analysis says there are none. Wu Jin, the political theorist who had studied Earth's chaotic governmental systems, had been preparing his own analysis of human social structures. The key insight is that human society appears chaotic and inefficient from the outside, but it's actually a complex adaptive system that generates innovation through controlled conflict. He displayed data about Earth's political and economic systems. Humans argue about everything, compete constantly, and disagree on fundamental principles. But this constant tension drives innovation and prevents stagnation. You fight to grow. Stronger, Korvan observed with growing understanding. We fight because we care, Jiwan corrected. We argue because different ideas matter to us. We compete because we want to be better. And when there's a real threat, all that energy gets focused on protecting what we value. Thylex posed a question that had been forming in many minds. What happens when humans disagree about what constitutes a threat? Minho's expression grew serious. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we fight when we should cooperate. But we learn from those mistakes, and we try to do better next time. That's why joining the council is important to us, Jiwan added. We need your wisdom to help us avoid the mistakes that come from isolation and fear. The ancient robot Mechanicus had been processing everything it had learned about human behavior. Your species represents a paradox. You are individually weak, but collectively strong. You lack advanced technology, but excel at adaptation. You are chaotic, but effective. We're also learning, Soyeon pointed out. Before this week, we had never seen energy manipulation or space-time engineering. Now our engineers are already working on ways to integrate those technologies with our systems. Kristal's form flashed with amazed colors. In 3 days, you have made theoretical advances that took our species centuries to achieve. Because we had teachers, Hyon said with genuine gratitude. Human progress has always been faster when we learn from others. That's why we build schools and universities and libraries. We share knowledge because shared knowledge grows faster. The council session continued for hours as representatives from dozens of species asked questions about human nature, society, and potential. But gradually, a consensus began to emerge. Veltar finally called for formal discussion. The question before the council is clear. Should humanity be granted full membership? For the first time since the humans had arrived, the vote was unanimous. But as the humans soon learned, membership in the council was just the beginning of their galactic journey. 6 months after humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council, the central station buzzed with activity unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. The corridors that had once been filled with beings moving in careful, formal patterns now echoed with sounds that would have been unthinkable before: laughter, debate, and the chaotic energy of rapid innovation. Jiwon stood in what had once been the formal council chamber, watching as humans and aliens worked together on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. The rigid seating arrangements had been replaced with flexible workspaces where crystalline beings collaborated with human engineers, ancient robots shared processing power with human computers, and energy entities taught human children to see mathematics in entirely new ways. "The transformation has been remarkable," Veltar observed, joining her at the observation platform. The stone-like being's features had subtly changed over the months, showing more expression and flexibility than before. "Though I confess the chaos still makes me uncomfortable," Jiwon smiled. "You should see Earth's university campuses. This is actually pretty organized by our standards." Below them, Dr. Soyeon worked with a team of mixed species on calculations that were revolutionizing galactic travel. Her breakthrough had come not from complex mathematics, but from asking a simple question. What if we're thinking about this wrong? The resulting theory promised to cut travel times between star systems by half. "Grand Advisor Soyeon," Veltar said, with something that might have been amusement, "I still struggle to believe that the Council's highest scientific position is held by someone who has been studying our technology for less than a year." "That's exactly why she's perfect for the job," Jiwon replied. "Fresh perspective sees things that experience misses." Across the station, Minho had established the Joint Military Academy that was changing how the galaxy thought about warfare. The curriculum combined human tactical flexibility with alien technological superiority, creating a new generation of military leaders who could adapt to any situation. The most important lesson, Minho was telling a class of mixed-species cadets, is that your greatest weapon is not your technology or your training. It's your ability to work with people who think differently than you do. The class included young beings from every council species, all learning to fight not as separate armies, but as a unified force. The human concept of "leave no one behind" had become the Academy's motto, translated into dozens of languages, but carrying the same meaning. We are stronger together. Haeon had been busier than anyone, leading research teams that combined human curiosity with alien knowledge. Her laboratory had become a place of constant discovery, where impossible became routine and breakthrough discoveries happened almost daily. "The key is asking the right questions," she explained to a group of visiting scientists from the outer rim. "Humans are very good at asking why and what if. Other species are better at providing the how and when. Together we can solve problems that stumped everyone individually." Her latest project involved working with Crystal to develop new forms of energy that responded to emotional states. The crystalline being's energy manipulation, combined with human emotional intelligence, had created power sources that grew stronger when people cooperated and weaker when they fought. "Fascinating." Crystal's translated voice carried notes of wonder. "Your species treats emotion as a tool rather than a distraction. This opens possibilities we never considered." The success stories were everywhere. Dong-hyuk had established engineering exchanges where humans learned alien construction techniques while teaching practical problem-solving approaches. His teams had reduced construction times for new stations by 60% while improving their durability. Nyon had revolutionized galactic communications by introducing the human concept of small talk, informal conversation that built relationships, and trust. What had once been purely functional communication networks now carried cultural exchanges, jokes, and personal stories that strengthened bonds between species. "Communication is about more than transferring information," she explained to a gathering of diplomatic corps representatives. "It's about building understanding between people who might otherwise fear each other." Even Admiral Sung-min had found his place in the new order. His battle-tested experience combined with human adaptability had made him the Council's go-to leader for any crisis that required unconventional solutions. Ships under his command now included crews from multiple species, all trained in human style, flexible tactics. "The secret," he told visiting military commanders, "is that there is no secret. We train people to think for themselves while working toward common goals. We trust them to make good decisions, and they usually do." But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the council itself. The rigid, formal structure had evolved into something more flexible and responsive. Where once decisions took months of careful deliberation, problems were now solved quickly by teams that formed organically around specific challenges. Corvan had become one of the strongest advocates for the new approach. In our million years of existence, the ancient being told other watchers, we have learned much but changed little. These humans have shown us that wisdom comes not from perfect knowledge, but from perfect willingness to learn. Thylex had been equally transformed. The ethereal being now spent considerable time in normal space-time, fascinated by human concepts of linear growth and progressive change. We existed outside time to achieve permanence, they explained to their own species. But permanence without growth is just another form of death. Zethral had perhaps changed the most. The proud Dominion warrior now worked closely with human military leaders, learning that true strength came not from individual superiority, but from the ability to lift others up. His latest achievement was establishing joint training programs, where Dominion warriors learned human teamwork while humans learned Dominion combat techniques. I was wrong about strength, he admitted to Minho during one of their strategy sessions. I thought it meant being better than others. You showed me it means helping others be better. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some older beings struggled with the rapid changes, yearning for the stability of previous eras. A few species had initially resisted human integration, fearing that their own cultures would be overwhelmed. But Dr. Suman's work in xenobiology had helped address these concerns. Her research showed that cultural exchange didn't weaken individual species. It strengthened them by adding new capabilities while preserving core characteristics. Diversity isn't a problem to be managed, she explained to concerned council members. It's a resource to be treasured. The more different we are, the more we can accomplish together. Wu Jin had become instrumental in helping species adapt their governmental structures to incorporate human-style dynamic change while maintaining their essential character. His political frameworks showed how different systems could coexist and complement each other. The goal isn't to make everyone the same, he told a gathering of planetary governors. It's to help everyone be their best selves while working toward common goals. As Jiwan watched the bustling activity around her, she reflected on how far they had all come. The trials that had once seemed so important now felt like ancient history. The real test hadn't been proving human worth. It had been learning to work together despite fundamental differences. Veltar interrupted her thoughts. There is news from the Outer Rim. 3 more species have requested council membership, inspired by what they have seen here. And what have they seen? Jiwan asked. Hope, the stone being replied simply. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy is growing stronger rather than simply older. A young human child ran past them, chasing what appeared to be a small energy creature that flickered between visible and invisible states. Both were laughing in ways that their species' translation systems couldn't quite capture, but that every being present understood perfectly. Look at them, Jiwan said softly. They don't see different species. They just see friends to play with. Perhaps. That is humanity's greatest gift, Veltar observed. Not your technology or your tactics, but your ability to see potential friends in everyone you meet. Mechanicus approached them, its ancient metal form moving with something that almost resembled excitement. I have completed my analysis of human integration effects across all council systems. The results are remarkable. How remarkable? Jiwan asked. Innovation rates have increased by 340%. Interspecies cooperation incidents have increased by 890%. Military effectiveness against external threats has improved by 450%. Most significantly, what humans call happiness indices have reached the highest levels in recorded galactic history. Veltar's features showed what might have been surprise. Happiness indices? The measurement of how content and fulfilled beings feel in their daily lives, Mechanicus explained. It appears that working together toward common goals while maintaining individual identity creates positive emotional states that improve performance across all categories. Luminos materialized beside them, its energy form pulsing with warm colors. we have learned something profound from humans. True strength comes not from perfection, but from the courage to keep growing, keep changing, keep reaching for some